Greetings and welcome to the general setup portion of the WinLABS tournament presentation. In this segment, we will guide you through the overall setup of a tournament. We will be entering general information such as the tournament name and the start and ending dates. After that, we will explain the average verification rules. These rules will instruct WinLABS to verify the average submitted by the bowler against a seasonal average already stored in your database. Have your tournament rules handy. The first time you open the tournament program, your list of tournaments will be blank as shown here. In succeeding years, you will see previous tournaments listed. Do not try to modify a tournament that you've already concluded. Make sure you always create a new tournament. To get things started, click New to add a new tournament. The New button will immediately take you to a new tournament definition screen as you see here. The cursor is automatically placed in the first field where you can name your tournament. Here, the general information is already filled out. The certification number in most cases is your association number. It will be automatically filled in for you. The starting and ending dates of your tournament are important to the system. Do not leave them blank. After entering the dates, WinLABS will also display the tournament year. After you have entered the tournament dates, you can add the tournament director information. The binoculars to the right of the field will take you to a search screen where you can select the director from a list of people already in your database. Click the binoculars to start the search. WinLABS allows you to search for people using a variety of methods. The two most common options are the bowler ID and the name field. You can instruct WinLABS to default to one or the other from the Setup Options menu. This same search screen is also used when searching for team captains or bowlers as you add them to the entry. In our example, we are searching by name. You can enter as much information in the search field as necessary to narrow the search. In our example, we entered the last name with a comma and the first two letters of the first name. Once the individual you are looking for is among those displayed on the screen, highlight the name in the list box and then click on the Select button. Once the director is selected, WinLABS will return to the Tournament Define screen. It is now time to create the rules that WinLABS will use to verify averages. Click on the Define button to proceed. Before we go into detail, allow me to clarify what this feature is for. WinLABS will not supply the bowler's average. Instead, you must enter the average that the bowler submitted on their entry. WinLABS will then compare it with the seasonal averages and mark it as verified by placing a check mark beside the average field. Your association probably has many years of bowler averages stored in WinLABS. Some are identified as winter averages, and others are considered summer. You may also have averages tied to sport leagues. There are also options to include current season averages. Please remember that this would only be feasible if you have collected and entered your current season averages into WinLABS. You need to know if and how your tournament utilizes summer averages. One of the options will allow you to utilize summer the same way you do the winter averages. An alternative will allow you to use summer averages only if the bowler does not have a winter average for that year. The first step is to enter the current year average. This would be the season in which the tournament is being held. Our sample tournament begins on February 2nd, 2008, which is in the 2007-8 average year. Once the season is entered, WinLABS will display the prior year to help confirm your selection. The next option is to establish the year of averages that you are going to compare the bowler's entering average with. Most tournaments still use the previous year's highest average as the entering average for their tournament. If this is the case in your tournament, the proper choice would be current year if no prior year. Some associations collect January 1st averages for use in their annual tournament, which runs in February. This provides a more current measure of their skill. They would then be using the current year averages. The proper selection in these cases would be prior year if no current year. The next option, called re-rating, allows you to have WinLABS verify the current year average if it is 10 or more pins above last year's average. This would only work if you are normally using last year's averages and you have collected and entered all the current year averages. The current year averages would then be checked to see if they are 10 or more pins above last year's average. If one is found that matches the bowler's submitted average, WinLABS will mark it as verified. The final two decisions further define the average that WinLABS will utilize for the verification process. If your tournament rules dictate that bowlers utilize the highest official average, then you would enter 21 games as the minimum games required. If you are running a tournament that requires more games for the entering average, you would enter the game requirements here. Lastly, you would need to instruct WinLABS on how it should utilize summer averages. If your tournament requests that bowlers use the highest previous year's average, and there is no reference to summer or winter averages, then you should select summer and winter. This means that a summer average that is greater than a winter average would be the required average to be used in this tournament. The summer if no winter option is self-explanatory. The summer average would be ignored if the bowler has a qualifying winter average. Before we get caught up in the event setup instructions, there's one more field on the Define screen that we have not yet described. The Age as of field is important if you are using age to determine divisions. When running a youth or senior tournament, make sure to enter the date that will be used to determine a bowler's age. If you leave the date blank, WinLABS will use the current date to make the decision. That would be the date you add the bowler to the team. This could cause problems because everyone may have a different date that is used to determine their age. In a worst-case scenario, a bowler on 2 entries could have 2 different ages within the same tournament. The date should never be one that is in the middle of your tournament. Most tournaments utilize the date the tournament begins. Youth tournaments use August 1st of the previous year. Before we begin to create our competition formats, you should know a little about how WinLABS defines events and divisions. Your first consideration will be whether you will be creating an event or can the competition be a division within an event. WinLABS is flexible enough that many competitions could be set up as an event or a division within an event. Think of an event as something that people and teams decide to enter. For example, the team competition or the doubles and singles competition. Think of a division as something that is assigned. For example, a team enters the team event and WinLABS automatically assigns them to a division based on their average or other criteria. This is a common example of a team event where averages determine the division. The event is made up of 3 handicap divisions and an optional scratch division. WinLABS will automatically place every team that enters the tournament into one of the 3 handicap divisions based on the combined average of the bowlers on the team. Every team would also be placed automatically in the scratch division, even though they may not have paid the optional fee. This will not be a problem because WinLABS allows you to list only those that have paid their fee when printing the standings report. Here is a similar example showing the doubles event. Another example, this is the singles event. Finally, here is the all events competition. We need to pause here and discuss an important rule regarding all events. Note that we do not have an optional scratch division. This is because the all events competition itself is almost always optional. If you have an optional all events handicap competition and an optional all events scratch competition, you must create separate events and not separate divisions. This is a WinLABS rule. Here you see the all events scratch is a separate event and not a separate division. Here is a different example of a mixture of scratch and handicap competitions. This is not as common as the previous examples. In this case, the tournament rules indicate that bowlers or teams with a high average must bowl scratch. Here you would actually create 3 handicap-type divisions. Since each division can be set up with its own handicap formula, you can create a formula for Division 1 that would ensure that there was no handicap. Division 2 and 3 would have the appropriate handicap applied. So why would someone create such a setup? Because it is a bowler or team's average that determines whether they bowl scratch or handicap. It is not something that they decide to do, as in the case of an optional scratch division. This concludes the general setup segment of the WinLABS tournament presentation.